WNIR, good morning. Line 5, hello.
Good morning, John.
Greetings.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I hope you're well.
I am, and I have called to clarify some of the issues, but I happen to have the actual information of what went on and when. And I want you to be aware, first of all, that there are actually two separate issues involving this trip. There's the issues that involve the school board, and then there's issues that involve the booster group's 501c3 status.
Okay.
So you have to separate the two issues, and that's the mistake that a lot of these band boosters are making, and they're being purposely confused.
How so?
Well, there's, as the woman before me mentioned, there are people with personal agendas involved, and she's one of them. And people are being purposely misled to intentionally make certain board members look bad.
Okay, so make your point, please.
Okay, so my point is this. Being very familiar with the situation, the problem from the school board's end was this. The field trip that you talk about that was approved back in January. The reason the crowd showed up that night was because the field trip was not on the board's agenda. And it wasn't on the agenda because it had no administrative signatures. It had no approval from anybody below the board at that point. And so it could not be on the agenda. But because an email was sent out asking, all the band parents to come to the meeting anyway, it was decided during the meeting that the board would add a discussion of that item. One reason it had no administrative signatures was because there were tons of legal and ethical questions swirling at the time from information that had just been learned by the board regarding these trips.
Clarify for me. Now, are you talking about the March 4th meeting or back in January?
I'm talking about right now, back in January.
Oh, okay.
The March 4th meeting only added to the issues.
That's when it really, yes, exactly. So let's just do some thing. In Cuyahoga Falls, this trip was planned, I'm told, as early as October. True or false?
True.
Okay. All right.
And long before that.
Long before. So this is every 2 years. This has been going on for a long time. And the band director and let me read Gina Mace's article here. Let me see. The travel agency has a contract with the band's booster club. This is the 501c3 you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So that is why and the instrumental patrons is at a separate 501c3.
No.
Okay.
It's all the same 501c3.
So the contract was not with the school board, so the school board had no skin in the game.
Correct.
Okay.
Other than being asked to approve a field trip.
Okay. Why would that be necessary?
Well, because
So the teacher would not lose his job?
No. I'll explain. Because the students and the two staff members are covered under the district's liability. We're liable for them if we approve the trip.
Right.
And the boosters can't, from what I've been told anyway, can't bear the cost of providing their own liability for students and staff and the adult chaperones. So they in essence, need the board's approval, or they can go on their own, but they're not covered by us then, and it just doesn't work for them that way.
Okay, so here was the controversy that I made it, and I said in my question, what do you believe it was unethical for the band director he's taking this, but the ethics committee said that, here we go. In Gina's article here, the fourth paragraph. That's the only way employees under certified, classified, or supplemental contract to the district can ever receive a free trip. Otherwise, they could have an ethical violation with the state of Ohio. In other words, if the board doesn't approve the trip and the director or anybody else that's under contract with it gets a free trip, it could be a violation of a gift, and it's unethical, meaning a loss of a teaching license. How do you feel about that rule?
That is correct. And you see, and that's where people are getting confused and thinking that the board they've given the impression that the board is responsible for licensure being in jeopardy, let's say, okay? And the thing is it's not the board. The ethics laws were written the way they were so that public employees aren't unduly influenced by things like trips. Now, if the Board of Education had contracted with this tour company, then yes, the directors can go. And it brings up an interesting point. The gentleman that told you he went with another band outside and they got trips comped for every so many students that go.
Yes.
Okay, this did happen with this trip. The boosters were comped for trips. And the reason there was no donation to the school board also wasn't a board member decision. It was the treasurer's decision because the trip this trip had already been paid for. Okay, and by the students that were going on it and the booster group. Okay, really by the students that were going on it. And the trips were already comped as a part of that contract through the boosters. So in the treasurer's opinion, there was no real donation. You couldn't donate 2 trips that had already been paid for through the very students that you were now trying to donate them from. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. So in other words, okay, so let's say it's, what was the average student's expense? $1,200? Let's just put a number on it. Do you have a ballpark?
$1,250.
Okay, so
and this is where the 501c3 problems come into play.
Okay.
Because regardless of what the lady earlier told you about these individual fundraising accounts, and this is what actually brought the whole issue to the board's attention, was the board attended a conference last November, and some members went to a seminar regarding booster groups. And that's where they heard that that it was illegal for 501c3s to even have individual fundraising accounts. Okay? And we can go into the reasons for that if you want to. I don't know how much time you want to waste on this, but it's essentially whether they want to do it this way or not, whether they've always done it this way or not, is really of no concern once we learn that you can't have it. They're against the law. And because of that, the board members that saw this presentation were aware how our trips work with the bands, okay? So they knew that there was an issue, and other issues came up during that same seminar. So the superintendent looked into it and sent the information out to the board members shortly after that conference. And this is what got everybody in an uproar because, my opinion is they didn't want to hear that they were doing anything wrong, and they certainly didn't want to fix anything.
All right, comment on this, and I have to move along. Okay, Superintendent Nichols is there's an article in here by Gina Mason, the Beacon. I don't know if you've seen it, but although Nichols encourages school-sponsored trips, planning and paying for them will be different in the future. How so?
Right. Well, because these contracts have to go through the board, or if they don't, then our staff cannot go on these trips at no cost because
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to charge an extra $50 and add that to the idea that if you have how many kids are on the buses right now as we speak.
They did already. That's the other problem with it. The chaperones are going for half price, and when you go into the 501c3 issue, the issue is this. 501c3 status means that you're a group. There are no individuals, and that's the reason individual fundraising accounts aren't allowed. And also in those rules says nobody can take a personal benefit. So you can't make the kids pay $1,250 and then only charge the chaperones half that cost and let other members go for free.
So what I hear you saying is that everybody on that bus should pay the same fare no matter what your status. Anybody gets on that bus. Now I have a question. Are these school buses?
No.
They're private. Okay, I want to clarify that because I had somebody email saying, "Is the school bus driver being paid?" And I'm like, "No, these are private buses."
The buses through the tour company.
And how many kids are on their way to Disney right now in from Cuyahoga Falls, roughly?
Actual kids, there's about 137.
Okay, so 100 at $1,200. I mean, that's a lot of money, right?
And that's what they did. Here's what they did. They overcharged the children for the cost of the trip so that they could send chaperones for half price and band directors for free. And you can't do that as a 501c3.
And so this is why the board was upset. They didn't want to be involved with anything that might be questionable in certain people's eyes. Is that what I hear you saying? Is this what I know?
Yeah, well, not only that, the board's counsel told them that if they did approve donations, accept basically false donations, and basically endorse this trip, that the board members themselves then could face ethical violations, because you can't knowingly know that there's violation, there's ethical issues going on, and go ahead and say we're okay with that. As elected officials, you're not allowed to do that. And so, yeah, the board was concerned for their own positions and in all the legal and ethical troubles surrounding this. You know, there's also tax issues involved, because the attorney, the March 4th meeting that you're talking about, the information given there was given from an attorney, and that's what made them nervous, because the attorney clearly said that the teachers' licenses would be in ethical violation if they're accepting trips from any entity that has not contracted the trip through the board. And they knew immediately the trip wasn't contracted through the board. So, you know, that's...
All right, so I'm a little more confused now than I was. Has this trip, according to the article, it says that he suggested that because the school board approved the school-related trip, the contract being held by the Booster Club is not an ethical issue. The
board's attorney said otherwise. The board's attorney said that doing the field trip... Did
the school board approve this, yes or no? Do you know?
The school board approved the field trip, and the board's attorney specifically has
advised them against it.
That they have not entered into a contract by approving a field trip. Approving the field trip is just that. You approved the teacher's application to go on a field trip. There's no contract entered as a result of that, and that's from the board's attorney. So people can try to make what they want to see work, but they're trying to fit it to a situation that it just does not fit into.
What was the vote to approve this? Do you know?
To approve the field trip?
Yes.
The vote was 5-0.
There was okay. So what?
5-0.
I'm just confirming what I've got in here. The board voted unanimously to approve this trip. So the kids are on their way. It's much ado about nothing. Going forward, this is a teachable moment. Going forward, what I would suggest, it seems to me, that everybody pays the same no matter what. That solves a lot of problems.
Well, and that's on the 501c3.
Well, what I'm saying is you don't, so let me ask you a question. How can you, in the future, if you don't have a 501c3, who handles the money? The school board? They're not going to handle the money for a band trip. This is $100,000 and more.
Yeah, well, yeah, and according to the attorneys, when a booster group wants to send your band, we'll just do the situation we're in. The proper ethical way it should have happened is this. They come to the board and they make a donation of the cost of the field trip. They donate to the board the $185,000.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm with you. That makes sense. Okay.
And the board contracts with the tour company.
Uh-huh.
Then in that case, you see, then those 4 comped trips that the band got.
Yes.
Then those belong to the school board.
Gotcha.
Okay. Then we say, okay, now we have 4 comped trips. We can now legally and ethically send to the band director on this trip for free.
Are you familiar what happened out in Medina with the superintendent? He had debt forgiven of student loans and many other peculiar things, and now the Internal Revenue Service is coming back and saying forgiveness of debt is tantamount to income, and somebody's got to pay tax on that. Are there issues?
Yeah.
Are those the issues the board's concerned with?
Well, there's tax issues involving our parents, but it's actually.
I'm not talking about property taxes. I'm talking about income tax.
You're talking, and I am too.
Okay.
So I'll take you through that super quick.
Okay.
But yeah, and that was another concern that I personally had. I don't know if board members had this concern, but I personally had this concern because under the 501c3 rules, it has been said this: if you take a personal benefit from a booster club, that's considered income.
Right.
And what does the IRS do with income done?
Well, they tax it.
Tax it.
So here's what would happen. The 501c3 would issue a 1099 to the band director for the amount of the trip, and he would have to disclose that.
And the chaperone.
And anybody else that was...
oh, wait, and now here it gets better. And any kid who fundraised into an individual account. Because if you went out and earned money to put into an account to send you personally on a trip.
Those are not earnings. Those are not earnings. They're donations. They're different.
No, they're not.
It's like when Bill Clinton donated his underwear on his tax returns. Those are not. That is not earned money.
John, this has already been determined. It's not earned money if you actually fundraised for the booster group.
Right.
But because they did.
If I come in and say, my name's Johnny Denning, and I'm raising money to send myself with the band, would you make a check? Who is the check payable to? Is it payable to John Denning? And then I take that and then I turn it over to the band. That's not considered wages.
Yes, let me tell you why. It's considered income, and here's why. Because when you turned it over to the band put it into an account with your name only on it. Okay, John Denning earned this $100 to go on the trip. Okay, and the IRS looks at that as,
oh, what a mess.
You have now taken, I know, it is, and that's what I'm getting at, why the board was in the situation that it was. Because the IRS now looks at that as, you now, John Denning, if you go on that trip,
yes,
okay, with your individual fundraising account,
yes,
you have now taken a personal benefit because you didn't donate that money to the booster group.
All right, so let's solve this. Let's solve this. Look, look, let's solve this going forward, okay?
Going forward.
Next year, okay, on the first day of band camp next year, we're getting ready to go. We're going to go to, let's just say it's the annual trip on spring break. You are going to go out and have to raise $1,250 for your own person, okay? Every person on the bus, we don't care how much money your parents make or whatever.
No, we're not allowed to tell them that, so no. First day of band
now, see, now this is the problem that I have with it.
Okay, here's what you can do. Here's what you can say.
I don't care if you're poor. I don't care who you are. Anybody can go out by their bootstraps and raise money.
They can. Let me finish. They can do that. The thing we can tell these kids, the booster group can tell these kids, we want everybody to fundraise.
No, we want everybody to raise $1,250. Or if you don't raise $1,250, you give the money back and then you sit at home and watch the Disney parade on TV.
Do that by law. Then that's not on the board. That's 501c3 rules.
So the check. All right. So let's solve this. The check. If somebody comes knocking.
I'm trying to. You won't let me tell you what they have to do. If they truly want to go on this trip again, here's what has to happen. The booster groups can tell these kids, we want and hope that every one of you will go out and fundraise your butts off. And we'll do that for the next 2 years, because they go on a trip every 2 years, okay? We want you to do this, and we hope you do this. But by law, we can't make you do this. And after 2 years, all the money that has fundraised is in one big pot. And by law, we also have to divide it equally amongst every member of this group, whether you fundraise or not, by law, not because of the board, by law. Once we divide this money up amongst everybody equally, then you are responsible for the remainder of the money of this trip.
Well, that's fair.
It is.
So here's what happens is.
But now we have to take it one further because of the board.
Okay, so okay.
You can't leave kids behind.
There's $1,050 for every student. Everybody, you have 2 months to go find $200. Oh, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll sell my $300 iPad.
Right.
So that's reasonable. Okay. So you're saying that the money must go payable to the 501c. If somebody writes a check or the cash, what if it's cash?
Doesn't matter. If you're donating it to the band, then it has to go to the band.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if somebody says, okay, I want to write a check, who do I make it payable to? Then problem solved. You just instruct these kids to make it payable to the band boosters and you move on.
Yeah, and you can't have the individual account. You can only tell these kids that after all the money has been raised.
They don't need the money. They don't. Why would they have an individual account to begin with?
Exactly, but they do.
You keep it in a Pringles can under your bed.
That's the whole issue they have faced since the beginning of this. You can't have these individual accounts. You can't have them.
I didn't even know that. You're the first ones telling me there was an individual account. That's just crazy. Why would there be an individual account? That's stupid.
Well, because this is the way that they've done it. The problem is the booster group never read their 501c3 rules, John.
You think?
And now that they've been made aware of it, they're mad. And I get that they don't like that they can't do it the way they wanted to do it anymore. I get it. You're mad about that. That's fine. The point is, the board couldn't risk their own ethical violations to try to make you look like you did something right, because you didn't. They are who messed it up from the get-go.
All I'm saying is, why did this just come to light today? Why? Well, this seems like it's been going on for years and years and years. Why would the board, if the board is omniscient and the oracle of all things, the school board is omniscient, they know all the rules, they know everything, why would they not?
I told them back in December, and here's what happened. The booster presidents came to a meeting that we held for them, specifically for this purpose, to make, and the board, this is where taxpayer money was used. The board actually paid the board's attorney to come in and explain all of this to the booster group president. And they turned around.
We
kept it to themselves instead of explaining it.
The whole idea of discussing this is so that everybody listening in the 12 or 14 counties around and how many school systems there are. This is a reason I brought this up. This is so easy. I could fix it in 30 seconds. I mean, come on.
That's what I just said. The board didn't let these groups know back in December. The booster presidents did not share it with their membership. And now they're turning around and acting like we just told them this. The board did not just tell them this. They were made aware along it. And in fact, one particular booster group member, president, knew it over a year ago.
Yeah, how could they not? So anyhow, I gotta go. I appreciate your call. Thanks.
I didn't bring this on anybody, and it wasn't anything like that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Gotta go.
Bye.
Bye-bye.